Transfer portal season is now officially underway, and 4 Missouri Tiger football players have already entered it. Well, to me, that gives one obvious opportunity to at least one young Tiger that I have liked for a really long time. So let's talk about him and his opportunities for bowl season. All of this and more coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball, and thank you for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And today's episode is brought to you by NetSuite. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. And as of right now, Missouri's football roster is definitely not in growth mode. No, it is in attrition mode as 4 guys have decided to enter the transfer portal. 2 tight ends, Daniel Parker Jr., who, of course, just had the game-winning catch against Florida. Also Messiah Swenson, and then defensive backs Chris Sheeran and also Ish Burdine as well, all entering the portal. You know, Burdine got a lot of action as a freshman in the 2020 campaign. Not the case so much this year with Allie Green and a Caleb Evans coming in, well, from the transfer portal from Tulsa this past offseason. So if you think this is it for Missouri's guys transferring out, well, you're quite wrong, because this is the new normal in college football, as much as I hate myself for just using that hackneyed phrase. But it's the truth. This is seemingly what's going to be happening for all of college football from now on. For as much as people have talked about the name, image, and likeness thing being a huge game changer for college football, to me, the portal has been a much bigger deal. But regardless, this is what we have to deal with. And Gabe DeArmond had a pretty good breakdown of all the guys that, well, I shouldn't say all the guys, but the amount of players who potentially we should expect to transfer. Gabe's thinking double digits. So maybe as many as 12 to 15 players could be seeing their way out of Missouri right now. But of course, that means, as we saw last season, again, with those defensive backs I mentioned previously, well, there's going to be a lot of additions as well, including, hey, let's speculate, possibly at the quarterback position. You never know, because Gabe's is a responsible reporter. Well, I'm just a guy with a microphone. So you know what? I'm going to speculate a little bit and say, it seems to me that it's unlikely that all 3 Missouri quarterbacks, the top 3 from this past season, it seems unlikely that all of them return for 2022. Bazelak, Brady Cook, Tyler Macon, with Sam Horn, a big-time recruit from Georgia, coming in, it just seems unlikely that we're going to carry all 4 of those guys on the same roster next season. And quite frankly, if you're Brady Cook, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall, right? It seems like everybody who had a voice, including my own, would have liked to have seen Brady Cook get a shot at some point in the last few weeks here. But it didn't happen. Not really. I mean, yes, he technically got some run. He played some football, but basically he came in during the Georgia and Arkansas games in order to be a run threat and hand off to Tyler Beatty, because I don't believe he attempted a pass the last 2 weeks. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So if you're Brady Cook, if you want to actually play football, you've got to be saying to yourself, man, I might have to do it somewhere else other than here. That's all there is to it. I don't know what his options are. And frankly, here's something we forget a lot, and it sounds really stupid, but these guys aren't just football players, of course. This is the most obvious statement in the world, but they have lives off the field too, and those factor in enormously. These guys have girlfriends. They might have relationships that they've been in for a long time that might be fairly serious. Now, as the generations go along here, yeah, young people are delaying marriage more and more, and perhaps not even getting married at all. But there are still exceptions to that rule. Of course, people in serious relationships, stuff like that. Maybe people just don't want to leave their friends at Mizzou or leave the geographical area, whatever it might be. So, again, all of this is total speculation on my part. But just from a pure football perspective, you ignore all that off the field stuff. Who could blame Brady Cook for looking around a little bit? And speaking of backup quarterbacks looking around, well, Spencer Rattler, who started off the season at Oklahoma as the leader for the Heisman Trophy, the odds-on favorite, is now in the transfer portal as well. Could he look at Missouri? I have absolutely no idea. That seems like a bit of a stretch to me. But the point is, it's not impossible if Missouri loses a quarterback or perhaps even two quarterbacks. Again, I'm not predicting the future. It wouldn't shock me if Missouri at least sniffs around the grad transfer quarterback market and at least sees what's out there, sees if there's any mutual interest. You have to put out feelers one way or the other in this day and age. I don't exactly know how all that works, but if you're a coach, you've got back channel ways to contact all kinds of kids. So it's going to be interesting because, as we learned last season, the transfer portal market, it's not just a sort of short free agent period that lasts a few weeks like in the NFL or something like that, where all the major players are sort of off the market immediately. This can last well into the offseason and even beyond into spring football, post-spring football. We obviously saw some guys decide to leave Mizzou last season post-spring football. So anything can happen here. Keep your mind open because this 2022 roster could end up looking a lot different than we think by the end of this offseason. Now, obviously, when we think about the transfer portal right now, it's natural to focus on the 2022 season. But clearly, those four young men who I just listed off, the two tight ends, the two defensive backs, well, they're not going to play in this bowl game either. So that leaves you a little bit shorthanded. It also creates opportunities for others. And I think the biggest opportunity, at least right now, among just factoring in the four guys who are now in the transfer portal, well, I think that's a freshman tight end by the name of Ryan Hoerstkamp. I think he's got a great opportunity during this bowl season. By the way, if you're a Mizzou fan, where do you want to go? There's been some bowl speculation and projection so far. Let's talk about maybe the best city we could possibly get. But first, I want to tell you about the best daily fantasy experience you can possibly get, and that's with our friends at Prize Picks, who is the leader in college sports daily fantasy. And here's the best part. You know what? The best way to actually win fantasy in daily, your best odds, head-to-head, right? So just do a one-on-one against a projections type contest at Prize Picks. That's my advice to you. It's the easiest thing in the world because sometimes daily fantasy can be a little bit overwhelming and intimidating for those of you who are newbies. Well, at Prize Picks, it's really quite simple. It's just you versus the projected numbers at Prize Picks. For instance, if Tyler Beatty plays in whatever the bowl game is, at a certain point, they're going to say, hey, is he going to get, say, 138 rushing yards, or is he going to get under that? Simple as that, right? If you have a feeling on that, well, check it out at Prize Picks. And don't hesitate to use the promo code Locked On so you can get a deposit match, a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Once again, promo code Locked On for your 100% instant deposit match up to $100 American dollars at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy made easy. So Ryan Hoerstkamp, a true freshman tight end from Washington, Missouri, he might have been my favorite actual recruit from Barry Odom's last class. Of course, in a way, it was Eli Drinkwitz's first class, but not really because they were Odom's guys. You know what I'm saying. The point is, there were some guys I liked from that class, and I think Ryan Hoerstkamp was right at the top of that list. Now, we didn't see anything amazing from Hoerstkamp during the regular season so far. He saw a little bit of action, mostly as a blocker at times, just a handful of games. But you know what? I think it'll be really interesting to see with, I guess, what, a couple 3 weeks of practices here. How many practices do you get in the bowl season now? Is it up to 12, something like that? I'm not even sure off the top of my head. I'm sorry to say. But the point is, that's some valuable time for real practices, walkthroughs, 7-on-7s, whatever these guys are doing to get prepared. Hoerstkamp should be ready to go because he'll essentially be either the number 1 or number 2 tight end this coming bowl season. Obviously, Nico Hayes still on the roster. You expect him to be the number 1 guy, but you need more than one tight end on game day without question. So the fact that Hoerstkamp will know he's going to play, will know what kind of role he has, and Drinkwitz will have time to maybe run some things to his strengths, well, I think it could be interesting. At the very least, should be valuable experience for that young man. And again, I really like him just as a physical player and his athleticism too. And to the point where I think in his high school tape, he looked like he could have played some defensive end possibly as well. Made some really athletic plays on defense too. So to me, Hoerstkamp, a kid I'm really excited about, and hopefully he'll give us some more reasons to be excited in the bowl game. And by the way, speaking of that bowl game, the projections so far are kind of all over the map, really, for Missouri. I've seen them in Nashville. I've seen them in Memphis. I've seen them in Birmingham, Alabama, Tampa, Shreveport. I think we can all agree we're over Shreveport, right? It's become a running joke among Mizzou fans at this point. But listen, if you're 6-6, beggars can't be choosers. If somehow Missouri would have gotten that extra victory, maybe against Boston College to get to 7-5, well, then maybe we could have gotten a little more greedy. Frankly, Nashville seems like that's probably out of the question. Tampa, maybe the most realistic opportunity at this point, or at least the most desirable location that is realistic, I should say. And hey, things could be a lot worse than, especially St. Pete Beach, in my opinion, in late December. That doesn't sound too shabby. And unfortunately, Michael Porter Jr. got some really bad news about his back. But some good news on the Tiger front. Lauren Hansen for the Tiger women's basketball team went absolutely off yesterday with 7 3-pointers in the first half on her way to a 30-plus point game. Hey, the Tiger women might be sucking me back in. I want to talk about that a little bit more, but first, a golf analogy. You see, this is it. The putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your business's growth. And frankly, with all the different laws and regulations that you have to deal with as a business owner, well, guess what? NetSuite has you covered with visibility and control of your financials, your human resources, inventory, whatever it might be. And it's all in one place with NetSuite. That's the beauty of this product. And over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite. And right now, through the end of the year, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. That's netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's here, the best Monday of the year. Of course, it's Cyber Monday, and Built.com is the place to aim your mouse. Get at least 20% off everything delicious and healthy. That's 20% off site-wide at Built.com, and even bigger discounts on Built Boost, Broth, and Built Swag. A brand new Built Bar flavor has landed just in time for Cyber Monday. Caramel almond delight, and it delivers absolutely everything it promises. Caramel, almond, and yes, delightful flavor. Triple check, my friends. So be sure to get yours before they're gone. 150 calories, 17 grams of protein. How can you possibly go wrong with that? 'Tis the season to save and give your taste buds the gift of Built Bar. Get to Built.com for these incredible tasting new bars and 20% off everything. Again, head to Built.com, enter code LOCK20 before it's too late. By the way, I guess I should mention quickly that, of course, you've almost certainly heard by now that Oklahoma coach Lincoln Riley off to USC. So much like Bob Stoops with a 2-possession deficit at Faurot Field, well, Lincoln Riley deciding to punt on joining the Southeastern Conference with the Sooners. In a way, kind of makes some sense, I guess. If you're definitely sure that things are going to work out great at UFC, well, that's awesome. We've seen USC, as in the University of Southern California, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness, that was hard to get out for some reason. But seriously, at Southern Cal, we've seen them be elite recently and obviously in the past as well. But like a lot of these programs that see themselves as the absolute tippy top version of themselves, hey, Lincoln Riley, it better work pretty quickly or your butt could be on the hot seat pretty fast. So it's an interesting move. It seemed like he was basically guaranteed to be at Oklahoma forever if he wanted to, but starting a new job, doesn't always work out perfectly. I understand that in theory, the Pac-12 is an easier path to the playoff and all that good stuff, but I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd have pulled that move if I were Lincoln Riley. But you know what? Over at our friends at betonline.ag, they have some odds for who the next coach could be at the University of Oklahoma. Mark Stoops, of course, the Kentucky coach at 6-1 is pretty interesting. Even more interesting, though, speaking of the aforementioned Bob Stoops, well, he's at 5-1. Seemingly, they think this is a pretty interesting opportunity for Bob to come on back to OU. I could see it. Bob's still a pretty young guy. Who knows? Maybe he's recharged and ready to go. I've heard that he might be the interim coach of this bowl game. So we'll see what happens. I haven't seen if that's officially the case or not, but certainly interesting. Also, notably, former Missouri defensive coach Alex Grinch, 12-1, also to take over at Oklahoma. Some interesting names there, certainly. Well, so far, so good for the Missouri Tiger women's basketball team, by the way, with all the focus on the disappointment of the men. Tiger women, 7-0, not too shabby. They took down the Christmas City basketball tournament, beating Columbia and Lehigh in Bethlehem, PA. Not exactly a murderer's row as far as a schedule so far for the Tigers, but you know what? They've taken care of business and looks really good offensively for the most part. Tigers scoring at least 80 points in the past 2 games, over 69 in at least every single game. So, hey, some actual offense at Mizzou Arena. That's nice to see, including Lauren Hansen last night against Lehigh went absolutely off in 34 minutes. Well, that young lady had 34 points, not too shabby. 9 threes, 12 out of 17 overall from the field. Not too bad, I got to tell you. That was fun. That was fun to watch. And you know what? Again, not a strong schedule so far. SIU Edwardsville coming up next at Mizzou Arena. But then Tigers travel to Baylor on Saturday on ESPNU. That's one we should check out as Missouri fans. Am I expecting a win at Baylor? Well, no, I'm not. But this will give us an idea of how real this Missouri women's basketball team is. And you know what? If Lauren Hansen and Asia Blackwell and the gals have something in them, we'll figure it out probably pretty soon in this month with Baylor, Missouri State, Illinois on the schedule. And then, of course, kicking off SEC play in Columbia against number 1 South Carolina. Doesn't get any tougher than that. So, going to be an interesting month here for that team. And unfortunately, a little bit too adventurous, or at least newsworthy of a start for Michael Porter Jr.'s season in Denver so far. Looks like his season might well be over. He's out for an indefinite period of time. He had back surgery once again. Porter just wasn't looking like himself to start the season. He wasn't physically right. They shut him down, figured out, gosh darn it, Porter needs his 3rd back surgery. And for a guy his age, not a great sign, obviously, not something you want to hear. You know, Denver being optimistic about the whole thing, saying they expect him to fully recover. But, you know, there's a reason that a guy who is as talented as he is fell to number 14 in the draft that year. There's a reason for that. And it was because his medicals are some of the worst that professional scouts have ever seen. You know, front office guys, they'll tell you, yeah, Michael Porter, great talent. That back looked really, really messed up. That's what our doctors were telling us. So I hope, once again, I'm glad he got paid. That's awesome. I'm glad he got the money, but I just hope he can get back, more importantly, to the kind of player that he was a season ago, which was something pretty darn special, especially on the offensive end of the court. And once again, thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. I'll certainly be back with you all to talk about the next Missouri basketball game, which is against Paul Quinn College tonight, ladies and gentlemen. How exciting is that? Now, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. So until next time, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.